Hey everybody, Mitch Haniger's #1 fan here, and I'm doing a bit of a different type of video today. I'm driving somewhere right now, and I'm probably going to be encountering some sort of traffic, and seeing as how if I want to be a safe person, I can't really take my eyes off the road, I can't use my very unprofessional notepad. So I'm probably just going to be doing an opinion piece, which are always fun. So what I'm thinking of doing is I'm just going to talk about what I think makes the All-Mariners team. I'm going to list off who I think is the best player that we have historically had at each position, and then I'm just going to make a comment on how I think we're doing at that position going into the 2020 season. So I guess without further ado, probably we'll just start with the rotation. I think out of all the starting pitchers we've had, if I were to pick the best one, it would have to be Felix Hernandez, simply because of how good he was from the day he started with us. He put together so many tremendous seasons, lots of innings pitched, lots of strikeouts, threw a perfect game. And his last couple seasons with us weren't the best, but even as he was getting up there in age, 2014, he was a contender for the Cy Young, and I think he should have won it. And that's no snub to any of the other fantastic starting pitchers we've had in our history. If I had to pick a 5-person rotation, just based on their time with us and not how they performed with other teams either before or after us, I guess with Felix, I suppose the obvious choice would be Randy Johnson. He had some serious control problems, but he was one of our best starters for a long time. The other lefty, I'd have to go in there with Jamie Moyer. I liked watching Jamie Moyer back in the day because when you're a kid, if you threw really fast, that was exciting, and you weren't really focused on what kind of pitches he was throwing. It was the fact that he just pitched so darn slow, and yet most of the time pitched super well. And I remember a story that I remember hearing was if he was having a bad game, and I think it was Lou Piniella, our manager at the time, if he were to come out and have a mound visit, and it was going to be to take him out of the game, Jamie was the type to say, "Look, I'm getting slammed, we're getting destroyed, save their arm, just keep me out here. We'll let him get as bad as it gets." And I think if that's a true story, that says a lot about him, both as a person and as a pitcher, because I kind of get that. On one hand, you never want to give up. That's just the thing with baseball. It ain't over till it's over. But when you're down by 10 runs and the game's half over, and you're obviously just not having a good pitching game today, don't bother taking me out. Don't tire out the bullpen's arm for a lost cause. I get that. So, yeah, he was always a lot of fun to watch, and he's definitely been one of the better, I guess, people is a good way to put it, since retiring. He's been doing a lot of philanthropic stuff, but that's a totally unrelated tangent. I would have to say, I don't know if I want to put James Paxton. He's one of those. I think I'd have him as the 5th member of the rotation, maybe. Obviously, a very good choice would be Cliff Lee as well, but he was only with us for a very short time, so I don't know if I really want to count him. Doug Fister would be another solid option for the rotation. He was definitely one of our better starting pitchers in our history. Same with Jason Vargas. We've had a lot of good lefties. Moyer, Johnson, Vargas, Lee, Paxton. But yeah, if we if I take just the best one, I think that has to go to Felix, because again, despite the last couple seasons, we can't forget all of the seasons before that where he was spectacular. And I said it in the last video. It was just a shame how we effectively wasted his career. But moving on, let's not go down that angry path again. For I think the best relief pitcher we've had, that's a much harder question to answer because you've obviously got a rotating bullpen, in and out, revolving door type thing is what they called it, as I said in another video. So picking the best reliever over the last 40 years, there have been so many good ones. So I'm trying to whittle it down to the relievers that we've had for at least a few years that did perform pretty well. And at that point, I have to say, I think the best reliever we've had probably have to be the Sheriff, Norm Charlton. I was going to go with Shigetoshi Hasegawa, but I think Norm Charlton, what he brought to the table, the way he pitched, the effectiveness that he pitched, I think this is another one of those cases where the numbers don't necessarily actually reflect the quality, because Norm Charlton was a beast. You could always expect him to give 110%, which, most baseball players always say, oh yeah, he'll give 110%, but, that's just a buzzword. But Norm Charlton, he gave 110%. He was awesome. The Sheriff, he was great. Obviously, I don't have that many personal memories with him because most of his time with the team was before my time, and I saw him when he came back. And, what little I did see of him was exciting, and looking into him, he was an exciting pitcher to watch. As for the closer, that was another sort of difficult question to answer, because you'd think the obvious answer would be Kazuhiro Sasaki. He was, he had that really good forkball, and he was the closer for that 2001 season, but I have to hand it to Edwin Diaz. It's a very recent option, I know, but I'm not counting his disastrous 2019 with the Mets, which I want to feel bad about, but the return we got for Cano and Diaz, I can't feel bad about it. I can only be happy. And Mariners fans, I'm sure you'll understand, it's nice being on the other side of the fence for once, where a player that we gave away that was good is actually bad once we give him away. Obviously, I would like him to be successful, but I'm not losing sleep over the fact that he's not. But his time with us, he was just a fantastic relief pitcher. When he came up, I believe we had Steve Cishek. I believe Cishek was our closer. And we were using Diaz, just a middle reliever, sometimes the 8th inning setup guy. And Cishek was not great. So when Diaz eventually succeeded in that role, he was lights out. And then, 2018 was just fantastic. We won so many games thanks to Edwin Diaz. Granted, they were probably a lot of games we shouldn't have won because, again, that run differential was not doing us any favors, all those one-run games. But when you've only got a one-run lead, you bring in your closer. That's just what you do. And he pulled through more often than not. And that's another thing that we also forget about Fernando Rodney when he was with us, is for all the heart palpitations he gave us, he only blew like 3 or 4 saves. He actually got us through almost every time he came in a save situation, which, when you look back and you think about it, you're like, that doesn't sound right, but look it up. It is. But yeah, Felix Hernandez, Norm Charlton, and Edwin Diaz. I think they are the best of our pitching staff at the 3 respective pitching positions. And going forward into 2020, I think we've got a very, I don't want to say optimistic, but we've got a potentially very, very good setup. Obviously, Marco Gonzalez, he's going to be the head of the pitching staff right now, the rotation. I don't know if I would call him an ace. I don't think I would. I'm sorry, Marco, if you ever see this. I just met you at the Alderwood Mall, and it was very fun. Thank you for the autograph. I'm sorry. But that's the one thing we definitely need is an ace. But the good thing about that is we have, some of those prospect pitchers that are definitely ace potential. Justice Sheffield, he's got the potential to be like that. Justin Dunn, he's got the potential to be our ace. And Kikuchi, if he can figure out MLB the way MLB figured out him and harness the type of stuff that he had when he was in Japan, he was one of Japan's best pitchers. And if he can bring some of that to the table in MLB, now that he's had his first year of experience, then, he's also definite ace material. Marco Gonzalez, Yusei Kikuchi, Justice Sheffield, Kendall Graveman, and then either Justin Dunn or a veteran starter, I think is what Jerry Dipoto was thinking. And so for 2020, that's pretty ideal. I said it in the video where I talk about the acquisitions and departures, but I would actually prefer getting a veteran starter instead of Justin Dunn, because I don't want to rush Justin Dunn. I don't want to rush anybody, really. The way I see it is if they don't just open everybody's eyes this coming spring training, start them out in the minors. We lose nothing by doing that. Have them hone their skills, figure their stuff out, and come up when they're truly ready. Because, again, 2020 is not a season of expectations or goals. It's a season of observation. And I think our pitching staff is definitely going to be the one we do the most observing on. And that goes especially true for the bullpen. We've only got a few consistent bullpen pieces. Sam Tuivalala, he's going to be in the bullpen. Our new signed Carl Edwards Jr., he's obviously going to be in there because he's on the Major League contract. But apart from that, that's probably going to be the most intriguing part of spring training, is who makes the bullpen. And more importantly, once the 2020 season is going, which members of those bullpen are elite or as close to elite as we can get. Because it's going to be another revolving door season, I think. Even if everybody were to miraculously stay healthy and we didn't lose a single pitcher to injury, I still think we're going to be sending down and calling up lots and lots of relievers. Sort of throwing it at the wall, seeing what sticks. And I think the same goes for the closing position. We had Hunter Strickland in 2019 as our, interim closer, but then he got hurt, and so it was closer by committee. If we called on you in the ninth, it's your day to step up. And I feel like that's going to be the case again this season, because, Dipoto hasn't made a signing for any closer, veteran or otherwise. So that's probably what we're going to do. We're probably going to do a closer by committee, and whoever shows the best results is going to be the closer. And I can get behind that, really. If I had to pick, I would like Gerson Bautista to be our closer. Because I really like an Edwin Diaz type pitcher. And that's also why I wasn't so sad that we lost Edwin Diaz, because, and this is no disrespect to him, but, a young reliever that can throw 100 miles an hour and a nasty slider, they're a dime a dozen nowadays. There's nothing unique about them. And that's kind of what Gerson Bautista is at as well. He throws really hard. He's got, a good breaking pitch. He needs to just work on that command a bit. But it worked for Diaz. If you're that type of pitcher, that's what you can do. So he would be my candidate for closer if I had to pick one right now. But I don't. I have all spring and all of 2020 to pick one, and so does the team. And really, it's their pick that matters, not mine. But that about does it for the pitching staff. They're easily the ones that are the most up in the air. The position players, we're a lot more set. And I guess starting with the catcher's a pretty obvious choice. Now, we've had some decent catchers throughout our history. Kenji Jojima, Dave Valley, Mike Zunino, if you don't count his bat. But Dan Wilson is the obvious choice. If Mike Zunino could have just learned to hit the actual baseball more than swing through it, I think he would definitely be the best catcher in Mariners history. But he couldn't. I think if we'd also kept John Jaso for a lot longer, he could have been a pretty beneficial member of the squad, but Dan Wilson's where it's at. He didn't hit for a ton of power like Mike Zunino did, but he was always squaring up the ball. You don't often have catchers that can hit 260 plus a season these days. Dan Wilson could do that, as well as be pretty darn defensively stellar. I'd say he was above average in almost every season he played for us. He was always very dependable at the backstop, and he also hit an inside the park home run, which is just weird. That's almost as weird as Prince Fielder hitting an inside the park home run. That was funny. But Dan Wilson, I don't even really need to talk much about him. He's the obvious choice. Going forward into 2020, I think our catching is pretty set up. Obviously, we don't have Omar Narvaez anymore. We do have Tom Murphy and Austin Nola, and they also both had breakout seasons in 2019. The interesting thing to look out for is, will they be able to repeat it? We didn't really see much of Austin Nola in the way of catcher, even though he is a catcher by trade. So it'll be, I keep sounding like a broken record, but it'll be interesting to see which one of them ends up becoming the regular catcher, and how long until our prospect Cal Raleigh comes up from the minor leagues, because we're all very high on him. He's a switch hitter. He showed a tremendous amount of power, and his strength, apparently, is that he's very good at getting to know his pitchers and the pitching staff in general. And I think that's going to come in handy so much, because a lot of the pitchers he's working with right now in the minors, once he gets his call up, a lot of them are going to be getting their call up too, either with him or soon after. So he's already going to have a pre-established relationship with much of the pitching staff he's going to be working with. And I think that is a very underrated quality in a catcher. You don't realize just how important that kind of thing is. So I think catcher, we've got a bright future with catcher. I'm going to be saying that with a lot of our positions, really. First base. Let's go to first base. That was another kind of tough position for me to decide which one of my favorites would I think be the greatest first baseman that we've had. But I got to go with John Olerud. I almost said Tino Martinez, because Tino was pretty good, but he didn't really truly shine until he got with the Yankees. But John Olerud, his whole time with us, it felt a lot longer than it actually was. I think it was only with us for 4 years. But John Olerud, just quality all around. He was another really, really good hitter, and you could always depend on him defensively. John Olerud wasn't really going to make too many errors, and when he came up to bat, he was going to do pretty well, most of the time. And that's something we haven't had for a very long time. I think I might have commented on it in a past video, but yeah, we're hurting for a real bona fide first baseman. Justin Smoke kind of fit that mold. His bat wasn't quite where we wanted it to be, but yeah, John Olerud's the real last true first baseman we had that I guess we could call dependable, in my opinion, in my very humble opinion that nobody asked for. Going into the future, if you guys saw my other video, you already know how I feel about Evan White. I hope, just like Justin Dunn, he's not called up right away. I hope he starts the season in the minors, unless he just absolutely destroys in the spring. Because we've got a few infielders that can play first base to fill in the time while Evan White hones himself and gets ready. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing him, quite possibly most of all, out of the prospects that could potentially come up in 2020. A second base was another tough one for me, because most of the second basemen we've had that I've personally experienced, they were good and not great. If I were to go off of purely the second baseman that I have witnessed, the answer here is Brett Boone. But the answer is not Brett Boone. Historically, if you look at the stats and how all of our second basemen have performed, the answer is Joey Cora, if you ask me. Brett Boone was pretty good defensively. He had a crazy amount of power. I'm pretty sure that's because he juiced, but even if he didn't and it was all genuine, that only really lasted for about a season and a half. He was tremendous for that 2001 season, and then a bit of the way into 2002, he just sort of started falling off the grid at a very, very steep pace. Whereas Joey Cora, who was before my time, but he was another very dependable infielder. He was quick, quick little speedy guy, and that allowed him to close the gaps defensively a whole lot. He was very good playing his position, and when he came up to bat, you could usually count on him to get a base hit. You could usually count on him to cry when you lose in the playoffs too. That's a joke I'm making about something I wasn't there for. But Joey Cora, I think, definitely the best second baseman we've had. I can't count Cano, because Cano was very good with the bat, but he was such a low-effort player, and I get that smoothness is Cano's shtick, but there's so many base hits that other players have gotten that they wouldn't have been base hits if you'd have just sped up a little bit, maybe made a diving effort, sliding effort, something. And they would have been probably outs because, goodness knows he has the arm for it. Despite how nonchalantly he threw the ball, the man managed to get it to first base in a nanosecond. So, yeah, I'm sorry, Mariners fans and Yankees fans, and I guess Mets fans too. But, I don't think Cano's that great of a second baseman. And Joey Cora, he's where it's at for the Mariners. Also sorry to Brett Boone, I guess. Shortstops. Actually, you know what? No, we'll go third base. We'll go via the numbering system. We'll go position 5. The best third baseman, I think, in the history of the Mariners, that's probably got to go to Adrian Beltre. Kyle Seager, very good third baseman, but his seasons are usually very mediocre. He's got some good power, he's got some quality defense, but so did Adrian Beltre. Beltre had both of those things, and he also got a lot more base hits. He hadn't quite reached his best potential with us, which you'd think would be the opposite of the case because he was much older when he went to the Rangers. But he was still very good with us. David Bell was also another good choice. Mike Blowers. But I think Adrian Beltre is probably the all-time great of the third baseman that we've had. Going into the future, we don't really have a third base prospect. It's about the only position we don't have one in. And we've got Kyle Seager through 2022, provided we don't trade him, which is definitely likely. But right now, it's only been rumors, so we're going to operate as if Kyle Seager will be with us until 2022. So therefore, going into the future, I still think we're pretty good at third base. I think a veteran presence is another thing that's very underrated. The fact that he's a fan favorite and he's been with this team for so long as well cannot be overstated either. So I think if he could just figure out the bat, he's got the power, he's got the defense, if he could just hit 20 points higher on his batting average, then we've got a fantastic hot corner. But that remains to be seen. His season last year was very injury shortened, but he's he's usually got a habit of getting better with every season, progressively. Now, when you're still in the mid-200s, that's still kind of suboptimal, but, we'll see. Shortstop next. I'm not sorry for saying this. Alex Rodriguez. He's the best shortstop we have ever had. We've had other great players there. Omar Vizquel was good there. Gene Segura was good there. Even Carlos Guillen. But Alex Rodriguez is the best shortstop we've ever had. Love him or hate him as a person, as a player for us, he was very good. And he didn't roid for us. He wasn't juiced when he was with us. He was all natural talent back then. I'm not talking about his time in Texas. I'm not talking about his time in New York. I'm talking about his time with Seattle. And when he was with Seattle, he was the best. And we haven't had a shortstop better than him since then. And it really is a shame the way his career went. I like to think if he had not signed with Texas, that maybe it all would have been fine. But he signed with Texas. He felt pressured by the contract, or so he says, and he juiced, and the rest is stained history. But with us, it was all talent. Going into the future, I think shortstop is definitely the strongest of our infield positions. J.P. Crawford is just, he's so much fun to watch. And he's got a crazy amount of potential as well. We saw that on display, off and on for 2019. He needs to work on his hitting a bit more. And his first month with us defensively wasn't stellar, but he proved that he is future Gold Glove material. And it was very inspiring to watch. It's a lot easier to have hope for the future when one of those future pieces comes through for you. I also realized I didn't talk about the future at second base. I just went on a tangent about the fact that I don't think Cano is the greatest. So we've got D. Gordon for one more season, and I like that. I think he's a very good second baseman. He hasn't had the greatest last couple of seasons, but he's been injured for those a lot. And normally I'm not the type to be like, oh, he was hurt, it's fine. But these were like fluke injuries. You can't help the fact that a ball fouled off and broke your toe. And even then, he still stuck with it. He played for like half a season with a broken toe, still managed to hit 260, 270, So I think that says a lot. And I think for 2020, I would prefer to have him at second base. I've already sort of given my opinions on Shed Long. He's probably our second baseman of the future. And I want Shed Long to work on his base running game. Because, defensively, he's got it there. Offensively, he's got it there. But D. Gordon, his main threat is his speed. And unless Shed Long can bring that to the table, I would always, in every case, prefer D. Gordon over Shed Long. Because D. Gordon, provided he's not breaking his toe on foul balls, he's also a 300 hitter. He's also a Gold Glove defender, an all-star. But he's going to steal 30-plus bags. He's going to turn a lot of singles into doubles, a lot of doubles into triples. Shed Long, not so sure. So I want him to work on his speed game, because when D. Gordon leaves this team, I want to replace him with basically D. Gordon. And if that can't be Shed Long, I want it to be someone else who is. And that leaves just the outfield and designated hitter. So my top outfielders in Mariners history, obviously one of the big obvious answers is Ken Griffey Jr. You can't go wrong with Griffey. Defensively, fantastic. Offensively, fantastic. Nothing needs to be said about Ken Griffey Jr. And the same with my second choice, Ichiro. Nothing needs to be said about Ichiro. He's the only player to have 10 consecutive seasons of 200-plus hits. And I think he was also a Gold Glover all those years and or an All-Star all those years. You know, he's the greatest. I think he's the greatest Mariner of all time. So him and Griffey are the very obvious choices. Now, I wanted to pick Jay Buhner for the third outfielder, but I couldn't. Jay Buhner had a really nice amount of power, but he didn't have a whole lot of speed, and you want speed in your outfielders. And I know that he was a corner outfielder, and they don't need to be as quick as, say, a center fielder. But defensively, he was okay. To quote Jerry Stiller from Seinfeld, he has a cannon for an arm, I believe he said. And that was very true. But defensively, he was just okay. And he also struck out a whole lot. He was a lot like Mike Zunino. If he wasn't striking out, he was hitting home runs. Obviously, one of those things happens a lot more than the other. So with that, my third best outfielder in Mariners history choice goes to Franklin Gutierrez. He defensively was so good whenever he wasn't being carted off in an ambulance. Offensively, you could usually count on him to get a hit. He had a decent amount of pop, and then when he came back after taking all of, I think, 2014 off, dude had crazy amounts of pop. He was hitting home runs left and right. He was easily the clutchest member on that team. So, for those reasons, he beats out Jay Buhner. And going into the future, we have such a stacked outfield. I said it in a previous video. We've got a logjam. Going into 2020, that outfield's probably going to be Kyle Lewis, Malik Smith, and Mitch Haniger. And I think they're all pretty solid options. If Malik Smith can, hit like we expect him to hit, if Mitch Haniger can figure his stuff out, and if Kyle Lewis continues to perform like what we saw at the end of 2019, and offensively, we've got a very good outfield. Defensively, Malik Smith needs to work on his, pathing a bit. And Kyle Lewis also definitely needs to work on it. Haniger, he doesn't. Haniger's good. Haniger's Gold Glove potential. And then we've got all of the younger guys in the outfield as well that we'll probably be seeing within the next year or two. Jared Kelenic, Jake Fraley, Julio Rodriguez. So yeah, that'll be another set of positions that's a whole lot of fun to watch. And I'm very much looking forward to how spring training works out, because we'll be able to see a bit of everybody. And with that, we have designated hitter Edgar Martinez. The award for the best designated hitter is literally called the Edgar Martinez Award. I'm not even going to take up any of your time talking about how good Edgar Martinez is, because you don't need me to tell you. Going forward, though, I have in our designated hitter position, Daniel Vogelbach showed tremendous potential at the plate during the first half of 2019, and then for the latter half of 2019, he was the Daniel Vogelbach that we had become accustomed to knowing. And we've known that Daniel Vogelbach for the past 3 years. So we've really only seen half a year out of 3 years where he has been any sort of good. It's mean, but it's true. The dude has just been flat garbage outside of the first half of 2019. I hope he manages to turn it around and keep that consistency up, maybe get his confidence back, because right now we have a hole at the DH position, a very large Daniel Vogelbach-sized hole, and that's no good. We need a big power hitter, and if he can't be that, I really think we have to look elsewhere. But that about does it. That about does it for this rant. I'm 10 minutes from where I'm supposed to go anyway. I actually made pretty good time. I wasn't slowed down all too much. But yeah, this has helped to pass the time for me. I hope it has helped to pass the time for you as well. Listening to the opinions of a stranger. Maybe even getting mad about them. Hopefully agreeing with them instead. But until then, I'll see you around with a much more planned out, less spontaneous, more numbers-oriented video next time. Have a good day.